Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. This week I had 10 comics, pretty average sized haul, and number 10 for me was Superior Spider-Man issue 1. Actually the title of the video, because I opened it up and I see a lot of Spider-Boy and I'm like, did I pick up the right book? And I did. Honestly, it takes until the end of the issue to actually get Superior Spider-Man in some shape or form because of every Dan Slott character that's ever been created being in this issue. Because Mr. Negative uses his powers to get Dr. Octopus to be Superior Spider-Man again. We have Dan Slott's FF team show up, even the Miss Thing character that hasn't showed up in like 6 years. So it's a whole Dan Slott party in this one. Honestly, what's interesting is that the last issue 1 I thought was the official issue 1. And then I realized, okay, it's just a prelude. It's telling us who this villain is. Fine. Then this issue 1 feels like a tease and also feels like a fake issue 1 because you're like, I don't even get to see Superior Spider-Man in this issue. There's so much Spider-Boy where I really thought it was a Spider-Boy issue. I don't think he was very necessary for the plot. Honestly, I just felt like there wasn't as much of a direction here, and I just wasn't... I was expecting something different, honestly. And I think the best way I could rate this is if you loved Superior Spider-Man, you're loving Spider-Boy, you're loving Spider-Verse, you loved all those books, you'll continue to like this series. But if you are kind of like me, where you like parts of Superior Spider-Man, you like parts of Spider-Verse, I don't know if this issue is going to convince you to be like, this is the one. This is the Spider-Man title you need to be picking up. And I think that's a shame. I feel like it's a character that a lot of people have grown to like, and I feel like you could do something different with him, but this feels very same old, same old. So overall, giving it 2 stars. I don't know if I'm going to get issue 2 for this one. I was a bit disappointed. Moving on to number 9, you're going to see a trend of issue 1s coming, but number 9 for me is The Outsiders issue 1. Another book I was super excited for because I do like Batwoman. I like this creative team, especially the writers. Felt very flat. It didn't feel too original. It felt like every other team book. It's like, all right, how do we get these characters together? Why are they here? But there's no big oomph. There's no big, like, yeah, these characters work with each other. This is why they should be together. It's just like, yeah, Luke's not doing anything. Batwoman's not doing anything. This Gotham War thing happened. Maybe they should be on a team together. But don't call it the Bat Family. Just call it The Outsiders. Again, I'll keep saying I wanted a little more from this series. It just was very forgettable. There wasn't much of a hook. The artwork was solid enough. And as a Kate fan, I was just looking for a little bit more from her, just more personality from her. But I was a bit disappointed with this. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to a different issue 1, which honestly a book I got on whim. I didn't get that many books this week, so I was like, oh, why not get this? And that is Speed Force issue 1. Honestly, this felt very much like Spider-Boy in the way where it didn't really feel like it was aimed for me. It felt like more was aimed towards preteens. I wouldn't even say this is a young adult book, where we get to see these 2 kids, you know, obviously Kid Flash, and then I forget the other girl's name, but she's been in Flash for a while. The characters that are not being utilized in other Flash series, they're here. And, you know, I feel like they are okay enough supporting characters, especially Wally. I mean, I think Wally, we've actually gotten a good amount of growth from him from previous Flash titles and also the Teen Titans book, which is referenced a little bit in this one as well. It was nice to see Roundhouse again. But I don't feel like it had the vibe of that old Teen Titans comic. And honestly, I don't even know if it really had too much of the promise until the end of why this is called Speed Force. It goes back to what was the hook and why do these characters need a miniseries or ongoing, and I don't know if that was really sold to me here, other than the artwork being good and having Daniele on the book, which I think is a good match for this kind of preteen series. But again, who is this targeting? Is preteens, are they going to pick up a book like this, or are we kind of trade waiting for it? Overall, I'm going to give that 2 stars. It just wasn't for me. Moving on to a book I'm sure a lot of people are going to like, but this is more out of Kat's taste. And number 7 is the Deviant issue 1. These are all the issue 1s I've got. I don't think I've ever done a video where every single issue 1 was towering the bottom of the list. But The Deviant, the reason why it's higher than some of these other issue ones is because this is more of a personal taste thing. I love character-driven stories, and James Tynion tells more stories that are ambiance-based, especially when it comes to his horror. It feels more like a film, and I like those type of movies, but I like it when I'm getting it in one chunk and I'm watching it on the screen, and there is a little character-driven story to be told. And here, you're getting, 10 minutes of what could be a 2-hour movie. And that's, for me, not the type of comics I enjoy. I do like, let's get into why we should enjoy this character, what's the hook, and really, again, it's more about like, see Santa? That's creepy. See this kill scene? That's really creepy. But there wasn't any moment where I'm like, whoa, that character is bringing me in. Like, I want to see more from them in particular, and I feel like that's the reason why I haven't been able to get into many of the James Tynion issue ones, and why maybe people have been able to get into his books. But overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 6, I believe. Maybe that was 7. That was 7. Moving on to number 6, which is World's Finest Teen Titans, issue 5. A book that I want to love, and I feel like there's parts of it that I do like. We get to see Artemis in this one. You get Robin kind of playing the leader, but also kind of faulting himself, saying the wrong things throughout the issue. And it kind of has this Young Justice vibe. But just like the last issue, where I think the last issue at least succeeded at the balancing act, we get to see way too many characters, way too many things being thrown at you in this issue, where you're like, okay, am I trying to see Robin not being a leader, Artemis being here? Like, I just want to know what I'm trying to grapple onto. It's just, it's too much to balance, and, I like the artwork, I like the potential of this book, but it's not hitting the marks I expected. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is the Cull issue 4. My shop didn't have a physical copy, so I read this one digitally. Honestly, I thought this was probably one of the best issues since issue 1, until you get to the last page when you find out this is the penultimate issue of the whole series. And honestly, that brought that down a little bit for me for the list, because I was like, wait, I feel like we just scratched the surface with these characters. I'm hoping just a conclusion of a story arc, because I feel like there's so much more to be told, and this was a good point A to point B where you get to see where the characters are, how their lives are going to be affected, but we don't actually get to see that yet. It's just like it's build up towards something bigger, and how can only one issue resolve all of that? So I was a little taken aback by that, but if I ignore the last page, I actually thought this was a pretty solid issue, which with, again, the characters interacting, them learning more about their powers, them going back to the real world, seeing how that's affected. Artwork is really good. So I was a bit torn on this one, because I'm like, I don't want it to see an end, because I feel like it's just starting to find its footing. Overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is the Immortal Thor issue 4. This issue is interesting because there's a lot of parts that I felt like lagged. I felt a little bored at certain parts, but then the highest highs were really high, where we get to see Storm become Thor, we get to see the Thor Corps come together, and Jane become a Thor again, and I'm like, oh, this is a lot of fun, but I wish you didn't wait until the last page to tell it. Also, the artwork is really good for this book. It's mostly an action issue, so if you're gonna have an action issue, have some splendid art, and that's exactly what we get here. So that's why it's a bit higher. It makes me excited to see where it's gonna go, but I don't know if it's a perfect issue 4. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Batman and Robin issue 3, another series that I am torn on. That's, I guess, the theme of this week's of comics. But this one, I love Robin, and I think he is such a great character. I enjoyed his previous run. I think Williamson gets Damian's voice very well. And the moments where he talks about school and being a kid and just being him, I think is the moments where this book shines. And then bring in Batman, that's where it doesn't. And it's so weird. And I feel like it almost, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it almost feels like an editorial mandate that we needed Batman here, and it just doesn't fit. It's just like, why don't we just have the previous Robin series, where I feel like it was a better balance. And this one, it's just the villains aren't too interesting. Seeing this different take on Hush, I'm not so particularly interested in, but I like the Damian moments. I think he shines. I think the artwork is not tailored to me, but it's very different, and I think it works for this book. So overall, giving it 3 stars. I want to love it, but right now I'm just feeling neutral about it. Moving on to number 2, which is Fishflies issue 3. I believe this is the last issue of the series, and Jeff Lemire does such a good job at telling these kind of quiet narratives about people, right? Do the Fishflies matter to me? It's a cool ambiance thing, but I don't think that's the thing that grabs me. It's these stories about, honestly, almost random people interacting. It's not like, oh, I know this main character. I've followed through with them and gone through this journey. Not this book in particular. I feel like it's a vignette of a lot of different people, and you're like, well, this is the circumstances that have brought to them. This is what their families look like, and this is where they are at. And it's a lot of good character moments that I enjoyed about this issue. In the end, we get to see the character escape her abusive father and go off on this big fish fly, and that's the end of the issue. Do I know the bigger theme of the book? No, but did I have a good time reading it? Yeah, I like Jeff Lemire's work, and I think the artwork was a lot of fun for this, and it was just a fun read. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, and that is Green Lantern issue 5. I've been really liking this book. I like it. It feels very much like Superman currently, where it feels like every issue really moves the plot, gives us a little bit more character development, but also kind of shocks you a little bit, where it grows the mythology and puts what you know about Green Lantern and what you know about Superman on its head without it feeling like a completely different character. And this honestly feels a lot like Jeff Johns' run of Green Lantern. So if you enjoyed that, this reminds me a lot of the beginning of his run and where that led to being other lanterns. So this issue, it's mostly an action issue, honestly. It's we get to see Hal versus Sinestro, and Sinestro wanting to bring fear to the planet, and Hal's like, hey, have courage. He wants you to have fear because that's what's feeding off his power. We get to see some airplane action. Carol's helping out through being on land, and we get to see Sinestro become a Red Lantern by the end. You're like, okay, that's pretty cool. Again, is it a big, blow up explosion issue? No, but sometimes you need to have a healthy action issue, and this is a way to do that, where character still feels like it comes first, but the action is out of this world and inventive, and you're doing something interesting with his powers, all while you're kind of building this bigger narrative of Sinestro versus Hal, and maybe even seeing more of the Lanterns, which I hope is something that we're building up to. And the artwork really fits for this book. It's just a very solid run. So overall, giving that 4 stars. That is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite comic of the week was. And last week's was Dead Lucky. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one.